Well, hello YouTube. Got a little project today. I was out messing around in my shed and found a box of parts, and I decided, what the heck, that'd be a good project for the day. So took this apart, and I think this is a McCulloch 210. Not 100% sure, but I know it's a 54cc, the 10 series, early 10 series saw. So I tore it all apart, and I think when I put it back together, I'm going to put it back together with electronic ignition and get rid of the points and things of that nature. But a couple things I wanted to show you. Let's see. First of all, when I took the crankshaft off, I could see that the seals were, particularly the small seal here on the clutch side, was pretty, looked like it was pretty wore out. It was on there pretty loose. It didn't have a good tight fit. And the one that goes into the bearing on the flywheel side was probably okay, but I took it out anyway, just to, the bearings looked to be fine, quite frankly, so that's not a problem. But then I had to replace the seals. So I remembered a place in town here called National Bearing Service. And these guys helped me out a couple years ago. So what I did is I measured what the dimensions were, wrote them down, took them over there, and by golly, these guys helped me out. So if you need a seal for a 10 series saw, for the crankshaft side or for the flywheel side, I've got them. And I know the numbers now, and these guys were awesome. I'm going to post the details down in the description of the video. So we've got new seals for this, and I bought a couple extras here so I can have them for some other saws that I'll probably wind up doing. I went ahead and put the fuel tank together. This one had the original cork gasket in it for the top here, and it looked to be in pretty good shape, so I went ahead and left that in there, didn't disturb it, because sometimes disturbing those and then trying to get them back causes you more problems than it's worth. Then I had to put a new fuel line in it, and this one is an aftermarket line, and sometimes these things, where they fit through the casing right here, are not quite as good as the original ones. And I've had several of these that I've put in over the years in these models of saws, and then they leak a little bit right there. But I figured out a little trick that seems to work real well that I've used several times. This one right now, that's why I've got it tipped up like this, to see if it leaks. Both the gasket and around the hose here where they slip through the hole. And it looks like I'm going to be okay on this one. But in case that hose starts to leak a little bit, a trick that I've found is I take a piece of shrink wrap tubing and put it right around over there, shrink wrap it, and it just adds a little bit more to that, the diameter around here, to make it fit a little bit tighter. And I've used that a couple of times. It seems to work real well. So I'm just going to leave the fuel tank. I got some fuel in there right now. I'm going to leave it tipped up like that so we can see and make sure there aren't any leaks. And as of right now, I think we're good. So we'll keep an eye on it, but I'll leave it tipped up there while I'm waiting for some of the other parts. The other thing, I took one of the rings off, and this cylinder looked like it was in very good shape. And I was wondering if it was actually a replacement cylinder that somebody had put on anyway, because there aren't any markings on the bottom of it. There's a little bit of yellow paint, but everything looked like it was new. There wasn't any paint on it. So I was wondering whether or not this was a replacement cylinder of some sort. So I took one of the rings off. Piston looks to be in good shape. Took one of the rings off, and it was kind of curious. So I took my caliper and measured the width of the ring, and it's 73 thousandths. And so I got a new ring, and the new ring is 63 thousandths, which was kind of curious to me, because I thought, I know I've experienced this before, where the rings had been worn out and they were narrower this way. So that was a little confusing. So I took the old ring and I measured it, the whole diameter of it. Now this is for an 1 3/4 piston. And the whole diameter of this ring, you probably can't get a great, perfect measurement on it, but without pressing it a little bit. But the whole outside of this ring is 1 in 787 thousandths. Okay? And the new ring is 1.814, which tells me that these rings, or the old rings here, are slightly compressed, even though they seem to have a little more of a thickness on them. So we're going to go ahead and put a new set of rings in this. I'm going to hang on to these, because sometimes if you're not careful you can break a ring, and this one doesn't look like it's worn too awfully bad, so I'm going to hang on to these old rings in case, I'll just mark them in case I ever need them. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get this thing put back together. Okay, we got that bearing on there. I don't have a press, and these don't go on too terribly hard, so I just took a 1/2 inch, what's that, a 9/16, 1/2 inch drive socket. It fits over that crankshaft, and we can right on there like that. We've got the cylinder head all cleaned out. Earlier I'd taken my Dremel tool with a little teeny brush, got down and cleaned out the combustion area, cleaned off these journals a little bit. They had some crap build up on them, and cleaned this out. Then I sprayed it all. Also cleaned out the ports. You know, they had some junk in it, particularly here on the exhaust port, so I got those pretty well cleaned out. I didn't port it or anything like that, but just kind of got it all cleaned out smooth like it was when it was new, and same thing on the intake port. So we're ready to go. And we have the new rings on, so that should be good. Okay, we've got our Durco around that around the crankcase halves here, and we'll go ahead and put the piston in. Now I usually put a little blue Loctite on these cylinder block bolts. Also, make sure you clean these bolts with some brake clean or something like that. I use Electromotive, because it's better to not have any gunk and crap on them when you put them back together. I've kind of gotten in the habit actually of replacing these bolts with Allen head bolts that are actually a little easier to get out when you're, I use my little Milwaukee on its lowest settings to kind of get these going down in there. Also, I was going to show you a little trick I did. I put new O-rings here and put a little teeny bit of grease, because these O-rings don't fit real tight on that, but I put a little bit of grease, and then when they tighten up, they smush out there a little bit, and they work just fine. These number 12 bolts, you really don't have to worry about wringing them off, because they're pretty almost 1/4 inch bolts, but you also don't want to break them or strip the threads. So, okay, there we go. Now we'll go ahead and put the manual oiler back on there and the automatic oiler back in the tank, and we'll be good to go. Okay, got this 210 put back together. So a couple things we did. We put a new fuel filter in, new fuel line, put an on and off switch, moved it over here, right here, versus this piece of grunt that McCulloch used for years. That's a decompression release and an off switch, so we disabled that. Put an electronic ignition in it, put the little module right here, cleaned up the starter housing, which usually always needs it, put new rings in it, new seals. One thing I haven't done, it probably needs a carburetor rebuild. I just put the carburetor on and adjusted it a little bit, but it's a little sluggish and a little hard to start, which isn't unusual for McCulloch. But I think if I put a kit in the carburetor and clean that up, we'll be good to go. But it runs like a brand new saw, actually. We'll start it up and let you hear it run. Like I said, I think we probably need to put a carburetor kit in this thing. It runs pretty good. It doesn't idle as good as I'd like. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you out there. Don't forget to comment, subscribe. Loved hearing your comments, and I'll get right back to you. Let me know.